Welcome to Plot Twist, where we dive into the heart of cinema's most unexpected moments. Every story has a twist, but some twists leave you speechless. Are you ready for the twist? Welcome to a new video for a new movie. Today we have a new adventure. You'll really like it, with a story full of suspense and excitement. Before we start, hit the like button to support us. And of course, we welcome the new subscribers and remind you to hit the bell button to get notified of everything new. If you had the chance to have magical powers and control the elements of nature around you, would you choose to control just one element, or would you want no one else to control the power of nature and control the elements around you? Would you choose to control just one element, or would you want no one else to control you, the elements? And would you sell these magical powers for money and cause the destruction of the world? That's what will happen with our heroes today. Let's see what they choose together. At the start of our movie, we learn that there was a large family called Cantare in France, and in its basement, there was a magical rose from the world of dwarves. The more the rose opened, the more magic dust came out of it. In this palace, there lived 4 sisters. When they discovered this magic dust, it merged with them and provided them with magical power, leaving them in control of the 4 elements of nature: water, fire, and wind. And all these years, the 4 were using their magical powers to help people and weren't doing anything evil or using them wrong. But it is inevitable that things will change, and one greedy person will emerge among them, and that's what happened with the 4 siblings. One of them, as soon as he has a daughter, names her Glinda. And Glinda wasn't just an ordinary girl. On the contrary, she had a strange talent and magical ability. It was the first time it appeared in the family, and her power was that she could transform things and change their appearance. Meaning her bottle, when she was hungry and tried to grab it with her hands, her magical power would ignite against her will and turn the bottle into a bird. And when her father saw what Glinda could do, he decided to exploit this to control the magical rose and take everything he wanted to be the strongest person in the world. But of course, he couldn't do that while Glinda was still young, so he waited until she grew a bit and could control her powers a bit and do what her father told her to do. And then he took her to his siblings in the magical basement where the magical rose was, and made her turn them into chairs and things that didn't move. And at the moment he thought he had won and his plans succeeded, he was surprised that Glinda's power was temporary, and his siblings returned to their natural state after a few minutes, before he could celebrate his victory. At that time, his siblings expelled him and his daughter Glinda out of the family mansion. And because of what happened between the 4 siblings and their separation, the rose closed itself and disappeared underground in the basement on its own. No one has been able to control it since then. At that time, the eldest brother asked the housekeeper to collect all the magical dust that was in the basement where the rose was and keep it. But one day, Glinda managed to enter the mansion without anyone noticing her and went into the basement to search for the rose. She thought and was sure that her uncles had closed off the rose to prevent her from reaching it, and she vowed to take revenge on them by controlling the rose's magic one day. Years later, 4 girls from the descendants of the 4 brothers lived in the mansion. On that day, it was Sky's 9th birthday, and their mother was preparing for the birthday and was very busy. But this time, she was enjoying magical powers for the first time in her life, and she discovered it in a difficult way. Of course, you're all asking how, so I'll tell you. So she was sleeping peacefully with her hand on the edge of the bed, and the boxing glove was on the floor under her hand. Without realizing it, she was controlling it and moving it from a distance. And as soon as she got up from the bed, the glove hit her face as if someone had punched her. She kept shouting, thinking one of her siblings had played a prank on her. But she was surprised to find her hands had a strange sparkle like magical dust. So she understood she was the one who did it. She tried her new powers and controlled the teddy bear that was on the ground and lifted it into the air, feeling happy. At that moment, her siblings came in to wake her up from sleep. They were surprised to see she had these superpowers. At that moment, she was controlling the small fish tank and lost focus for a moment. As soon as they entered, she dropped it, and it broke. But her siblings reassured her, and one of them also had superpowers. She could gather the fish tank that had broken into 500 pieces and restore it in seconds. At that moment, Sky was surprised and learned that her 3 siblings also had superpowers. Since they were 9 years old and these powers appeared, Marina controlled water and gathered the water that spilled on the ground into another container. Their older sister controlled fire and lit a flame that ignited the carpet, and Sky was very excited. She thought they would show these powers to the world and boast about them and become famous on the internet. But her older sister told her they had to keep this a secret between the 4 of them, so no one could know no matter what. After Sky got dressed and prepared for school, She went down with her siblings and mother, who had prepared a birthday cake to celebrate with her before she left to start the day with celebrations. And when Sky was about to tell her mother about her magical powers, her sister stopped her and told her that when her powers first appeared, she was scared and told her parents. But the result was they took her to a psychologist and didn't believe her. So she had to lie to them and tell them she was just joking and didn't have superpowers. Since then, she kept the secret and made her siblings do the same. And now it was Sky's turn. Sky was in a hurry to go with her siblings, so she sang her birthday song quickly to leave. She didn't even want to open her presents until she came back from school, and after singing the song with her siblings quickly, she blew out the candles and went out with her siblings, and they went down to the basement. At that time, they showed her the secret door they used to enter the hall where the magical rose was. Of course, she couldn't believe all these surprises in one day, and as soon as they lifted the carpet off the ground, the base of the magical rose and the riddle they needed to solve to make the rose appear became visible. They learned they had to place their hands together on the ground in the marked spot, and when the four siblings placed their hands together on the ground in the marked spot, one of them lit up under their hand, a different color than the others, and they were surprised that the rose appeared from underneath. The earth opened up, and magical dust emerged from it. As soon as this happened, a wave of magical energy radiated from the magical flower, reaching every place in the town. One of the places it reached was Jolinda's hotel, where she sensed this magical energy and realized that the magical flower had bloomed again. She then asked her assistant to contact the girl's father to buy the house at any cost so she could control the magical flower. The housekeeper of the old mansion, who had been around since Sydney and Jolinda's father's time, also sensed this magical energy. She agreed with her magical broom to embark on a new mission to gather the magical dust. At that time, the four girls were captivated by the beauty and magic of the flower. When Sky approached it and tried to touch it, she was surprised by the appearance of magical dust, which merged with all four of them. At the same moment, they felt their powers change and become stronger. When Flora tried to control a small plant next to the wall, she was shocked to find that with a single movement of her hand, she turned it into a large tree. The same happened with all her sisters. One tried to lift the carpet until it fell on her, without her realizing it. And Marina's control over water doubled, extinguishing a fire caused by her sister unintentionally. After that, when their mother called them to go to school, they agreed not to use any magic at all to avoid getting exposed, and they went to school while Jolinda's assistant contacted their father to buy the house. But their father refused, and when Jolinda found out, she was very upset and decided to persuade him to change his mind. We see the four sisters arriving at school where there was a talent contest, and they were participating in it, singing together and impressing the audience with their talent. But at that time, Sky was determined to get her lucky jacket from the bag. When her sister refused, Sky used her powers to pull the jacket out of the bag without anyone noticing. Her sister then ran and stood on the jacket, which was moving on its own, so no one would notice they had superpowers. Sky, of course, didn't like that, so she pulled the jacket from under her sister all at once, causing her to fall to the ground. After they sang and presented their act, the housekeeper before their mother agreed to work in the house because their mother mistook her for the new maid she was expecting to arrive. Madame Dougherty immediately went down to the basement, saw the magical flower, and with the broom she had, took some of the magical dust and covered the entire house with it. At that time, Jolinda was on her way, determined to buy the house, and was upset that the girl's father refused to sell it. When she found out that he told Oswald he wouldn't sell the house unless the roof was repaired, she tried to enter but couldn't because there was a protective shield made by the housekeeper with magical dust to protect the flower and the girls. Jolinda was determined to get what she wanted and saw a bird flying over the house. She used her magical powers to turn it into an elephant, which fell on the house's roof, breaking it, then returned to its natural form and flew away. She then asked Oswald to contact Colin and offer double the house's value. When Colin returned home with his family and saw what happened to the house's roof, they were very surprised and didn't know how it happened. The girls then told their parents that they would use their savings to fix what was broken in the house, but not to move from it. Afterward, they learned the big surprise that when 4 siblings are born in the family on the 9th birthday of the 4th child, the house becomes theirs. No one can act on it except the 4 of them together. They went down to the basement to check on the magical flower, and when Flan touched it this time, she noticed the petals on the flower, each inscribed with something. They took them and arranged them until they realized they were talking about the 4 elements and their responsibility to protect the world. The girls didn't understand what was written, so they decided to go to the city library to look for any historical books about the family to learn the truth. Sky agreed with them that she would keep her parents busy talking so they wouldn't notice the roof they decided to fix with their magical powers and didn't want their parents to ask who fixed it or how. At that time, Jalinda was sitting in Madame Dougherty's house, and this was part of the housekeeper's plan to book all the hotels in the area to force Jalinda to stay in her house, which was written as a hotel. All this was to keep an eye on her and know everything Jalinda was planning. The next day, after their parents went to work, the four girls cooperated and used their magical powers to repair the house. Jalinda was watching from a hill opposite the house, surprised that they controlled the four elements easily despite their young age. She decided to have Oswald watch them to find their weaknesses and approach them from there. After a while, the girls finished repairing the house, and Flan told them to go to the library together, but none of them were ready, but they reluctantly went with her. Eventually, each of them went to their training, leaving Flan to go to the library alone, while Oswald watched them and heard their conversation, realizing that their weak point was their musical band. When Jalinda learned of this, she agreed with him to keep an eye on them to make them doubt each other and break up the band to separate them from each other. We then see Flan in the library searching for the house's history and any previous news about it. She kept searching until she found what she wanted, a book with pictures of her four ancestors, pictures of the house, and of Jalinda and Madame Dougherty, the housekeeper. Flan was surprised that she looked the same for hundreds of years without changing anything from the old pictures. She saw a map of the place where the family and Madame Dougherty's cottage were, so she photographed it and left. At that time, Jalinda went to Marina while she was in the store with her friend buying new dresses for the show next Friday. Jalinda explained that she was a talent scout and was forming a big band and wanted her to be in it. She agreed to meet her at the hotel on Friday at 3 in the afternoon. When Marina told her she had a show with her sisters, Jalinda said it was an opportunity she couldn't miss and that her sisters would surely manage. Afterwards, he goes to meet Sky as she exits karate practice and walks with him because Sky refused to ride in the car with him. While talking to her, he learns from Sky that their household is democratic, so no one can sell anything without the approval of all four sisters. Glinda whispers to Sky to vote for selling the house to become rich quickly and drive an expensive car like that. Indeed, as soon as Sky returns home, she places a marble in the dish they had agreed upon, indicating that if it fills with marbles, they would sell the house. Each one of them can cast their vote without anyone knowing. At that moment, the magical flower begins to close again because the four sisters are no longer united and of one heart as before. Meanwhile, Flame is walking through the forest towards Madame Dougherty's cottage and overhears Glinda discussing their plan with Oswald, wanting to rule alone. Oswald sees Flame and chases her through the forest, but she manages to escape him, causing him to fall into a pond and become very angry. The problem is that when Flame heard Glinda's words, she mistakenly thought it was Madame Dougherty who wanted to control the magic of the flower and the four elements. When she returns home and tells her sisters what happened, they don't believe her. When she asks them to stay home to protect the flower, none of them agree, and they all argue. At that moment, the magical flower disappears again and seals itself underground. The next morning, they notice that the roof has been repaired, and Sky tells them that two workers happened to pass by and helped fix the roof without taking any money. Flame refuses to leave the house or go to a party with her sisters. After they leave, she is surprised by Madame Dougherty trying to enter, but she stops her, thinking she's the evil Glinda. Madame Dougherty notices that the magical shield around the house has disappeared and realizes they are in real trouble. Marina, to ensure they enter the competition and win, has her friend join them instead of Flame to complete the band. Meanwhile, Glinda sneaks to the window of the prison and places another marble in the dish to ensure they agree to sell the house. In the competition, the three sisters perform their act, but they are not at their best because their friend doesn't know the words or dance like Flame, and they don't win first place but make it to the finals with a few other bands. When the three return home, they are shocked to find they have lost all their magical powers and can no longer control the four elements. They rush to the basement to see the flower. At that moment, their father receives another message from Glinda that she is doubling the price of the house. They are surprised to find 3 marbles in the dish, indicating that the girls have decided to sell the house. They don't realize it's a trick and believe it's their decision, thinking it's their house and the money they will get is enough for each to buy a new house of her choice, start a new life, and pay for their education. At that point, Colin contacts Oswald and tells him they have agreed to sell the house. Immediately, Glinda brings a bag full of insects, turns them into a lot of money, and Oswald takes it to Colin to sign the sale contract quickly and leave. The girls, seeing the magical flower, are surprised it's gone along with their powers. Flame finds a note from the flower with the word "for" on it, but no one understands its meaning. When they try to put their hands together like they did initially, nothing happens. Flame starts crying. Sky yells angrily, wanting her powers back. They go to bed, and their parents come up to tell them the house is sold. Flame is very upset and argues with them, saying they must cancel the sale by any means. But it's too late. They pack their clothes and leave the house. Flame is upset with her sisters, and none of them speak to each other. On the way, Flame takes out the note from the flower she took with her, trying to understand its meaning. Glinda goes to the house, and when Doherty tries to stop her, Glinda turns her into a tree and enters the house. Each time she sees a picture of one of her uncles, she tries to insert herself into the picture. Her biggest shock comes when she enters the basement and finds the magical flower missing, just like before. Not believing the situation is repeating itself, and her plan to control the four elements and rule the world is failing. Meanwhile, the four sisters prepare for their performance when Flame finally understands the meaning of the word "for" on the flower. The real reason they lost their powers is that they became divided and no longer united as before. She tells her sisters, and they decide to reunite as before. Nothing can separate them, and the first thing they do is go on stage and sing together. At the moment they reconcile and forget their differences, their magical powers return. The magical flower also blooms anew, but Glinda, who was nearby, tries to reach it, not knowing that the four sisters have reunited. The basement suddenly lights up as the flower opens. At that moment, Glinda, who had lost hope, rejoices when she sees the flower and attempts to control all four elements simultaneously. Oswald goes to the girls' competition and tells them the whole truth because he doesn't want Glinda to destroy the world. The girls decide to save the world in the competition, planning to enter it again next year. They rush home, confront Glinda, and each fights her with her power. They struggle against her until all four crawl to the ground, place their hands on the flower's stem, and regain control. Glinda loses all her powers and becomes an ordinary human, even losing her ability to transform objects. Sky controls her and throws her out the window into the pond outside. Oswald mocks her and leaves, and everything returns to normal. They tell Madame Dougherty the real reason behind the flower's closing and disappearance, assuring her they no longer need her protection as they are united and will never be divided again. They burn the house sale contract and are surprised to find the money bag full of frogs, reclaiming their house without any problems. Don't forget to support by liking and sharing the video, subscribing to the channel, and activating the notification bell so you receive updates